Yeah, tell him to buy the book.
And we are live with Dale Kaczmarek again, and he has taken some pretty interesting trips recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm still traveling actually. Starting, well, I mean, we were all kind of locked down, as you know, because of the COVID stuff from
Oh yeah.
probably February or on until maybe the end of May. And I got to the point I just said, well, look, I need to do something here because well, our team normally averages somewhere about 20 plus investigations a year, and that's just on weekends alone. So we're usually pretty active, and I decided that, well, we're going to head down to Tennessee for a trip in early June. And at that point in Tennessee, we were heading down to Marion County, Tennessee. And at that point, the entire county only had 23 confirmed cases of COVID and one death. So I figured, oh, we're pretty safe. And we decided to pick up a bunch of places down there. We started our trip at Stones River Battlefield in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is a place that I've been to. I guess the first time I was there was back in 1986 or 84. I actually saw an article, well, actually a book, that was written by Richard Weiner back in maybe the late 70s or early 1980s, called More Haunted Houses. And they had a whole section in there about haunted battlefields. And they mentioned, Stones River, Chickamauga, and Shiloh, as well as Chattanooga. And that's what really, believe it or not, really sparked my interest at that point in getting involved more with haunted battlefields, especially Civil War battlefields.
Right.
So we went, I did a bunch of research. I talked to forest rangers. I did what I could. Back in the 1980s, they didn't have a lot of the World Wide Web like they do today. They had some, I guess. And so we finally went down there for, an investigation back in 19, that might be me actually making that echo. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh,
Oh,
I
I
can
can
hear
hear you
you.
just
We've
fine.
been able to hear you, no problem.
Okay. So we decided to go down there and to try to do an investigation. Now, the great part about this is I had seen one of these paranormal shows on Travel Channel called Paranormal Emergency. And they had on that show a bunch of first responders who apparently had paranormal experiences. EMTs,
Right.
fire department personnel, police, ambulance, doctors, etc. And I was just skimming through the channels one day, oh, brand new show. So I started to record it. And sure enough, there's an episode called Scared to Death about a Rutherford County Sheriff's Department officer named Sheriff Deputy Matt King, who actually was out at Stones River at night about 3 o'clock in the morning. He pulled in there to catch up on some reports, and he saw this full-bodied apparition of what he later determined was a Confederate soldier. And that wasn't strange enough. And the guy just kept walking towards him. And according to the deputy sheriff, went through him. And at that point, the deputy, he claimed, and I don't have any reason to doubt him, he sounds like a very sensible guy, he found himself back in the battle of Stones River. And at that point, he felt everything. He heard everything. He was like he was the guy. He was a soldier now. And towards the end, just before he kind of flashed out of it or came back, he was bayoneted in the chest, felt everything, came back, and then he's standing alone in a battlefield. And I go, wow, that's such an amazing story. So
Yeah.
I contacted the
Definitely.
Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, not thinking that anybody was going to ever respond back to me. And within a few hours, they started talking to me. Oh yeah, Deputy King. Oh yeah, he definitely had his encounter. I mean, I said, is there any chance that Deputy King can be in contact with me? Can you give him my phone number? Can we get together? Can you show us where this is at? He goes, oh, definitely. Just let us know when you're coming down, and we'll have Deputy King out there. So that was one of the main reasons we went out there for that. In the rest of the battlefield, there are two or three other stops that are just haunted as hell because of all the stuff that happened out there.
Right.
And unfortunately, because of about that time, it was still coming out of the COVID, we're still in the COVID, but it was starting to get a little bit better. But about that time, they started to have a lot of problem with rioting around the cities. He got called out to Nashville to assist other officers out there, and we never got a chance to meet him. But we already had our trip planned, so we went out there and did our trip anyway. He gave us real good directions of where he said he saw this ghost. I think we were pretty much close to where it was. We need to maybe 1 year go back down there. But when I was down there, there was a lot of strange things that happened to us when we were down there. There are two sites in the battlefield which are also mentioned in the book: stop number 4 and stop number 6. And stop number 4, they say, if you get into this wooded area, it's always 20 degrees cooler. Now I can understand it being in the shade. Okay, so that could be possibly part of it. But they say you go into this area and you don't hear a single bird chirp. Nothing. It's just like a dead area. And as soon as you come back out, the birds are chirping, the squirrels are jumping around. There was cannon that was left behind. It was called abandoned artillery. When we went to, I saw that in 1984. When we went back there this year, I couldn't find that stop, period. I just could not find that stop. We tried to get into the visitor center. It was closed. We were able to get some maps of the location from one of the park rangers. I did talk to the head park ranger the day before and then that day, hoping that we could get permission to be there that in the evening. And he said, well, you have to have a special permit. I said, well, darn, if I'd have known that, I would have applied for a special permit and maybe I would have gotten it. I mean, who knows? But we went to stop number 6, which is at the end of the battle, where they say that there was about 1,800 soldiers killed in about 35 minutes of fighting. They were just mowed down by artillery. Now, when we were there, this was a creepy area. It really was. It was wide open. It was near a small cemetery called the McFadden Farm. And we're doing an EVP session near this big giant marker. And I'm looking down towards the trails where people walk on and so forth to go through the battlefield. And I see somebody coming around a tree doing this.
Oh.
Peeking around the tree. Now, this is off the trail. I mean, this is an area that's fenced off. You shouldn't be on.
Scout.
And I go, what the hell's that? And right away, I pointed to the area. I said, I just saw what I thought was maybe a real person, but maybe in hindsight, maybe it was a shadow figure kind of peering around the side of the tree, like poking his head around. One of my assistants ran down there, Mike Rosario. He came down there, he looked around, saw nothing. One of our other people that were with us, Kelly Griffey, one of our new members, is a bit intuitive. And even she was 40, 50 yards away from me when I had this experience. So she really didn't hear that until I yelled for Mikey to go down there and check it out. And she comes up, even before Mikey gets down the trail and says anything, she goes, I just felt something over here. There's something strange going on. And Mikey goes, what? He goes, I think there's a presence of some kind. So that was pretty bizarre. There was also an area that was like a trench, like what they call breastworks. They used to, in Civil War, they would dig into the ground and then pile up logs and stone,
right.
And they would make them up to your breasts. So they call them breastworks. So you could pop up, shoot, pop back down, load your rifle without getting fear of getting shot, shoot again. And we were sitting in there and doing an EVP session, and one, in fact, there's one of our, I was there with another group called Crawford County Ghost Hunters, Jason Snyder. He was using a device called the Sangean Ghost Box. I don't know if you ever heard this before.
No.
Nope.
And it's basically a ghost box. And as we started to turn it on, now it had been pretty much drizzling throughout the day. I mean, off and on, and nothing heavy. We were underneath some trees, and I guess this could have been a coincidence, but a single drop of rainwater hit the speaker. And then the device didn't work after that. It started coming out really garbly. And he thought, well, maybe the device was ruined. And, a couple of days later, when it dried out, it was fine. But when we were in that area, that kind of hollowed out area, we got some communications on the Sangean. We also got stuff on the Phasma box, a couple on the Obelisk. So I thought it was a pretty active area as far as battlefields are concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some other videos and documentaries on that area, quite a few times over the last year or so.
So then that was just part one. I mean, we had 3 more parts to go. So we went down to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. I had been down there about 4 other times, and every time we go down there, we have had strange phenomena, from disembodied voices to shadow play. The elevators are locked down. They don't work anymore. We were sitting there talking to our guide about 5 or 6 years ago, actually. And all of a sudden, we're right by the nurse's station. The elevators are right behind us. Suddenly you hear ding, like the elevator when it comes down to the bottom floor. And we both turned around and go, the elevators don't work. So it has to be a residual that we were picking up. We were hearing screams, not this time, but the time before, disembodied screams coming down the hallway. So I think that was 2012. We went back in 2014 or 2015. We went into the same location, which happened to be a nursery, which, by the way, was just kind of laid out really weird. We found out the reason why. It didn't make any sense initially, but the nursery, the operating rooms, and the psych ward were on the same floor, which to me is kind of crazy.
Okay, that's interesting.
But it later had turned from this to that to this to that, and that's how it became that. So we were actually in the nursery, and this was after we heard the scream, and we came back a couple of years later. So we were using at that time we were using an SB7, a ghost box, and it scans quickly, AM, FM frequencies. Sometimes you can get radio bleed through, which is obviously radio. And I like to use AM because there's not a lot of radio as far as music that comes through AM.
Right.
And one of our people that was there from another group, Jeannie Chilton, who used to run a group called PRIOM, the Paranormal Research Investigators of Missouri, was with us. And she says, we heard you screaming. Can you tell us who you are? And immediately the ghost box said something, a whole sentence that came out in the same word, not the same word, the same tonal quality over multiple channels. It said, probably was Florence. Wow. And then we continued on, then we switched to the Obelisk. And we went to the Obelisk in phonetic mode, not the dictionary mode that uses the pre-programmed words, but
right.
The area that allows the spirits to form their own words.
Right.
Well, we asked, are you part of the staff, or are you with the psychiatric ward? And something that came through that sounded initially like the number 8. We later determined, when other people heard it immediately, they said AID, AID. So then we said, "Are you a nurse's aide?" And the obelisk says in phonetic mode, RN, registered nurse.
Registered nurse.
Nurse.
So it blew me off. So we went back there again this time, and we had some pretty crazy stuff that happened again. We went into the nursery. We had a REM pod on the floor. I know you guys know what a REM pod is. It has a telescoping probe. It has lights around there. It produces a magnetic field. If something gets close to that field, the lights and the sound begins to alert. And even our own bodies and our own energy. So we had us in the middle of the floor, well away from everybody. And I was videotaping it with my 4K camera. And we were using another device, which I like to use some apps, not a lot of them. Phasmabox and Paratech are the only two apps I will ever use. We're using a device called a Paratech. Now, immediately the Paratech said the word green. And as soon as it said green, the REM pod first light lit up to green. And I go, well, that's just crazy. A little bit later, we went into one of the operating rooms. Now, this was an area of the hospital that had no power. And the K2 meters, which usually I don't use K2 meters, some of my other team members like to use them. But considering there's no power to that part of the building, these K2 meters were buried. They were in the red.
Wow.
So we couldn't explain that. We just pretty simply explained that. So we kind of, every time we've been there, we go to these operating rooms and we try to do a role-playing event. Somebody lays on the operating table. We have somebody play the nurse, have somebody play the doctor, and see what kind of responses we get. We were hearing voices coming down the hallway that was recorded, and you can see it if you go to my website. I've just posted all this stuff.
Yeah, I saw that.
You can go to the website, ghostresearch.org, and you can check out the Old South Pittsburgh Hospital 2020 edition, and you can see and hear not only voices in the room, but then you hear voices coming down the hallway. And it was just amazing. Even over the ghost box, which is, as you know, can be kind of noisy, we were hearing some noises. They turned the ghost box off, and we still heard the noises and the voices. So that was number two. Then we went to a place called Hale's Bar Marina, and I was trying to, normally a place like that I've never been inside physically, even though we visited a couple times, I would record it from start to finish. I started off with 3/4 battery power on a 6-hour battery or 8-hour battery. So I figured I had plenty of time. As soon as I got in the building, bam, the battery goes down to 1/4 of power, and it keeps shutting off. So we get to the section of the building. My friends weren't recording. There was another team member from another paranormal group we never saw before recording the whole time. We all got into this one area, which was very acoustically sound, and our guide said that he was going to do something. I don't know what he was going to do, but all of a sudden, everybody in the group heard this blood-curdling scream of a female come through the area. And I know it wasn't something that was put on, because literally the guide's eyes got about as large as a silver dollar. Mm-hmm. I mean, he does this, and automatically he forgets what he was supposed to be taking us in the room to do. We all go into the other room. We're looking out the windows. We're looking out into the river. There ain't nobody anywhere nearby, especially a female. And we couldn't explain that. And then the last place we went to was Brushy Mountain Prison in Petros, Tennessee. So we had like 4 locations we did on that June trip. And that is just a very remote area. It's sandwiched between 2 mountains. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of it. It's very remote. We heard disembodied screams. That was part of our team actually physically saw a prison door open by itself. Unfortunately, nobody was recording at the time. which is often what happens when you're not paying attention. You got to be filming 24/7
Yep.
because these
Turn that
folks
camera on as soon as
know
you get out of the
you're
car.
filming.
It's like I said, I wish I would have had a camera, but I got so involved in watching what I saw that I didn't think to go get my cell phone. I was afraid that if I went and got it, it would be gone. You know.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
sees some stuff out by
there
his
was
place.
several locations in Brushy Mountain. There was a place called the Gymnasium, and they had seen shadow figures coming in and out of the gymnasium from time to time. So we went in there, and there was in the gymnasium. Of course, it just looks like a gymnasium, and they have like a equipment room, which I guess they would have stored like the basketballs and volleyballs and all the equipment for whatever you use. And it was closed up. Had been closed up for probably decades. And we go to one side of the building, and all of a sudden we hear noises coming out of this little room. Now, I guess if you tried to debunk it, you could probably say maybe it was rodents. It could have been a raccoon that got in there. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, we didn't check for any holes in the the actual room. So as I'm walking across the gymnasium, it was pretty hot and humid. So I had a towel wrapped over my shoulder, which I was just wiping my forehead every few seconds. It kind of kept the sweat off of me.
Yeah.
And I had it literally 50-50, one side here and one side. And I did not bend over. And all of a sudden, literally that towel got ripped off my shoulder and thrown to the floor. And I mean, it wasn't like, it didn't feel like somebody ripped it off. It just suddenly was on my shoulder and it was off my shoulder and it was on the floor. And I didn't bend over. And even if I would have bent over, I doubt it would have just slid off my shoulder.
Yeah.
So there was some pretty crazy stuff that happened there throughout our time. I mean, there was, we were hearing disembodied voices. In fact, for those that are not familiar with Brushy Mountain was the location where in cell 28 was the cell of James Earl Ray, who was the guy who was accused of killing Martin Luther King. Now, he spent time in that prison, and we did a lot of EVP at his cell block, including me trying to reach through and try to shake his hand. And we heard voices, we heard disembodied sounds, we heard cell block doors closing, a lot of audible stuff. I mean, we got a few EVPs, but the amazing thing that most everything we heard was audible. Walking through, our team was well on the other side of the property. I'm sure it wasn't them, and I'm sure these doors, I mean, literally sounded like somebody just took them and just bam, slammed them really loud, and it would echo and reverberate throughout the whole building. So crazy place, very crazy. We had a great weekend. I tell you, we could have, probably did more. We probably could have stayed another night and probably did an overnight on, Hales Bar Marina to actually do a private, I guess. But we're going to be going back there probably, next year or the year after. We're thinking about doing a trio of places, next time, maybe going to the Bell Witch Cave, which is also in Adams.
I've heard about that place.
I've heard stories about that one too.
Yeah. So we're thinking of doing that along with this private at the Hales Bar Marina, and possibly doing something else, maybe the Thomas House in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, or something like that.
Oh, that just sounds like it'd be a blast. Those prisons are real popular for having a lot of activity. Don't you find that strange? I mean, besides the people that are locked up there, it just makes you wonder if a lot of when those prisoners say that they've been abused or, shit happens inside there, if it really does. Because of all the unsettled activity that happens in a lot of those prisons, because there's paranormal investigators out there that just like to go to just the prisons for that reason.
Well, of all the places that I've been to, and I've been to a lot of locations, and there's three locations or three types of locations to me that are more active than anything else: prisons, old hospitals, and old insane asylums. Those
That all makes sense too.
those three tend to be the most active. I mean, you look at all the stuff that goes on in prisons, people getting executed, people getting killed by other prisoners. Hospitals, I mean, trauma, things of that nature. The same as
Pandemics.
barbaric treatment from the past. It all makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I'm not shocked by any of that stuff because, you look back at some of those old hospitals that happened during TB. A lot of those really popular ones were old TB hospitals.
Right.
You know,
The Hills,
in,
one,
in
yeah.
the in the times that they didn't have the treatments for that kind of stuff. I mean, we weren't as scientifically advanced as we are now, so they were using all kinds of weird treatments and God knows what experiments.
Joe,
What's
bring
this
that
here,
pic
Mark?
up. Bring it up.
Yep.
You
Oh,
recognize it?
that's the prison.
Yep. Yeah, that prison literally is in a valley between two mountains. In fact, if you
Does that
look
make it
behind
better?
those, if you
I
look
like
behind
that.
those drums right there, those I guess you'd call them storage containers or something.
Right here.
I mean, yeah, back there, that's all hills, and
Okay.
they were. In fact, the guy that took us through here said that uh, her family still owns part of that property out there. And in fact, the state bought the property from her family to build the prison, and that's all coal mining area. And for from 1880s until like 1964 or 65, they said that coal from that area pretty much financed the entire state because that was so rich in coal. There was so much atrocities taking place out here. People being, bludgeoned to death by other prisoners, buried on the property. There's a small cemetery not too far, which we didn't have a chance to go to, unfortunately. But there are many, as you can see, there's many other outbuildings besides the main
Right.
prison there.
The main prison would be this cream-colored building, right?
Yes, exactly, right there in the center. Mhm.
Okay, and then you do have other outbuildings, which is probably housing for like the warden and probably some housing for some of the guards too.
Yeah,
And then,
and then groundskeepers and that kind of activity as
and
well.
then there's possibly a building here that would have been a hospital too.
Yes, yes. I mean, we had access to the entire property, but I tell you, once you got in that prison, I mean, you needed 8, 10, 12 hours to go through that whole building, literally. Afterwards.
The
So
prison itself.
we focused our main objective on the prison rather than the outbuilding. So if we ever come back this way and decide to do it again, we'll have more time to spend in other locations.
The way that looks there, just looking at that picture, that looks like it's about a 2 or 3 day investigation if you really put the time into it.
Yeah, it could very well be.
Definitely a whole day inside the prison itself because of the size of it, but the rest of it, the whole grounds area looks like it'd be a day and a half to do
I don't
all
know.
of it
I might
too.
want to spend longer because you're that close to mountains. That'd be a good chance to kind of look for Bigfoot.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever.
I mean, well, think about it.
But the whole thing is with this, I can I can see spending a day in there
Oh,
and
easy.
doing all that. Plus, also you got to think too, with the coal that's under the mountains here, and there's most likely some streams and stuff that natural springs that run through these mountains. That's also an attractor for spirits and something that will an energy source that they can pull from when
Yeah,
they
well, it's also
manifest.
dangerous too. Isn't there a town like what is it called?
Okay,
Center.
I'm gonna
It's in
pop this out
Pennsylvania, I
now.
believe. That's pretty much off limits
Yeah, there is a town. I can't remember
because it's
exactly where
still
it's at,
burning.
but
It's been
they
burning
have
for
actually,
years.
yeah, they've actually called it or dubbed it the real Silent Hill. It's a the whole town sits on top of a coal mine, and the coal mine's been burning for like close to 100 years now.
Yeah, it's been burning for a long period of time. It got to the point that the town had to be evacuated because of the
Gases.
carbon monoxide, the
Yep.
sulfur,
You got the sulfur, the
heat.
carbon
I mean,
monoxide, and then
big cracks inside in the streets and the roads.
Oh yeah, and it
yep,
was damaging the structures of the buildings because of that. Some people refused to even leave.
It's a ghost town now. It's
oh
pretty
yeah,
much a ghost town. But
Right, but when it
these are the kind
first,
of places I like to go to. I mean, even though there's not anything paranormal, I mean, this is really just strange. You know how you'd have a fire, but it kind of makes sense. I mean,
well yeah,
you got a
but
fuel
there's
source down there. You got coal that's
oh god,
burning,
right,
24/7 and getting to reaching temperatures incredibly hot that it's literally just breaking the earth apart.
yep, it's melting
yeah,
everything.
and now the
The-
place is covered with graffiti when you first enter the place, from what
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
yeah, that's pretty
I think
sad,
that's
but
pathetic that people have to tag or graffiti up places like that.
Yeah,
You know,
I
I
was
mean,
here.
I was down at the Devil's Punch Bowl and they did it there too. And that place is supposed to be enchanted, where you can find like fairies and gnomes.
that's
I've been to a couple of Devil's locations myself. I was actually in a place called the Devil's Tramping Ground. If you're familiar with that, that's actually out in let me think here for a second. It's Virginia, West Virginia, somewhere out there. It's been a while since I've been out there. It's an area that they say that the devil actually danced on the ground. And to this day, nothing grows on the property. There's a big circle of bare dirt out there that nothing actually grows. There's actually a place not too far from where I live in um, uh, the um, Indian site, Starved Rock, and there's a place called the Devil's Nose. And even the Wisconsin Dells, there are the
yeah,
witch's cauldron and things of that nature. These mystical, really crazy name things that might have been named by the Native American Indians because they possessed evil spirits, or they were thought to be sacred sites, and they were
yep,
trying
Well,
to get
this
the white men off the land. So
Yeah, well, Wisconsin, most of these the states around the Great Lakes are pretty rich with Native American history. Wisconsin Dells, they used to have that stand rock ceremonial where a dog jumped from one side to the other
right, yeah,
over a big ravine, and then
saw that.
they had this big cement pit where they'd have a fire in the middle of it, and the Native Americans would do some of their ritual dances, and you'd be able to go and see some of this stuff. But this was a long time ago. They don't even do half that stuff
I
anymore.
don't think they do most of
You,
it.
I mean, you that was back when they used to have uh, an actual real Indian trading post where you go in, and that stuff wasn't made in China. It was made here in Wisconsin by the Native American tribes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how rich the history was here.
Well, you think of it this way: literally any place you step on here in the United States is
It was Native American land.
Native American Indians. I mean, they are the
Right.
true Americans.
Right.
They have
Yeah,
their
Right.
roots right here. I mean, all of us pretty much, unless you're Native American Indian, you have your ancestors that came from different countries that settled
yep.
here. Uh,
Right. We're all mutts of some sort.
yeah,
Well, the United States is known as the melting pot of the world because we have so many different diversities of cultures and races here in the United
Well, we're
States. That
basically all immigrants.
well, yeah, and that like Dale said, unless you are a true American native, American
Right.
Indian, you can't truly be considered a native of the United States
No.
because of you know
Well, I've gotten into that discussion
I
before.
mean, if you go even further back than that, I mean, look at before the conquistadores came into, Florida, Central America, South America. I mean, they had
Ecuador.
the Mayans, the Incans, the Aztecs. And a lot of those civilizations were pretty much almost wiped out by
Yep.
the Spanish people, the
And
Spaniards that came in here to get. All they were concerned about is bringing gold back, and
yep.
Right.
Finding the riches and stealing it from them.
yeah, rape and
Yeah.
pillage and everything else.
Yep. Here in here, not very far from where the two of us live, there's a town called uh, 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 I can't even think now. It's right over by Johnson Creek.
Lake Mills.
As yeah, Lake Mills. The lake there, Rock Lake. There's actual
Oh, a
pyramids.
pyramid in
There's
there.
actual no, there are
Pyramids in there.
pyramids
That's
in the
right.
bottom of it. And Asylum Park, where we actually did an investigation, actually went out there once
No, that's a
or
strange
twice.
place.
We were out there twice. The first time when we got back to download everything, he couldn't download nothing
It was
because it was all
corrupt.
corrupt.
Brand new
And we
SD card.
yeah, it's a brand new SD
Wow.
card, and we actually got some hits on the EMF meters out there. And there's obviously no lines, no electrical lines or anything going through
Not where we were
that
at.
area.
Not where we were at when that
Not
was
even
going off.
no. The whole park, pretty much, there is no electrical lines or anything going through there.
There has to be because some of those buildings had electricity running to them.
Maybe up by the road, because those buildings weren't
But where
down
we
by
were
where
at,
we
there
were.
was no. But where we were at, there was no.
And then the second time we went out there, we actually went down by the river itself, which is I think Crawfish River. It runs through there,
Yeah, that's Crawfish River.
and we were walking one of the trails back up to the mounds area, and I caught a glimpse of what looked like somebody following us, but
Mm.
there was nobody there. I actually stopped and walked backtracked back behind us to get a view because the trail we were on came from the river and it kind of curved up and around like this around some of the woods. And so as you're walking along, one part of the trail is start getting hidden by the trees and everything. So, it literally I caught out of my peripheral vision that which looked like a shadow of a person that might have been following us or behind us. And when I turned around, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of strange history on that place.
Now, but the thing is though about Aztalan, that actually was determined not to be a Native American, what we'd consider Native American, but more of an Aztecian settlement. And the signs and everything out there actually tell you about it.
Right.
So they actually migrated up this far.
But next time we go, we're going to go right up to that Indian, the Princess Burial Mound.
Yeah.
There's a spot in this park. It's called the Princess Burial Mound. It's marked with a stone marker. It's kind of behind the fence of the little tourist office, but it's like just a wooden fence that you can. And the other side from the road is wide open.
Yeah.
They say if you stand on there at night and you're looking at her stone, she used to wear three or four shell belts or more, made out of shells, and you'd hear them rattling behind you.
Wow.
You'd hear a shell rattling behind you. Now here's a very unique story. They did an what do you call that? Where they
Excavation.
right? They dug up. Yeah, I'm having a hard time. I always have since I've gotten dentures. I don't know what it is. But anyway, they dug up her remains. They took them and put them on display. They left the belts. They put her on display at a museum in Milwaukee. The Native American tribes protested down there, and to this day they have not been returned. They're in storage at that very same museum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there
good.
are so many stories like that that I could tell you. Two that come to mind of very haunted locations that I had a chance to at least explore. One being Mammoth Cave National Park, the longest cave in the world in Kentucky. When I was down there with my dad when I was a youngster back in 1965, there was a Native American Indian mummified remains that was actually found by some archaeologists who were exploring the cave one year. They know that some of these Indians used to come out there 2,000 or more years ago and scrape gypsum off the walls. So that what they would do is they would have what they call cane reed torches. So if they had like 10 of them, and you walked in and you used 5 of them, well, you better turn around and get back out because you just got enough to get back out. And they knew that. Well, apparently there's just one Native American was up there and he was scraping gypsum off the wall. He hit some sort of keystone and this 3-ton big behemoth of a rock just pinned him there. And he died there. He wasn't discovered for almost 2,000 years.
Oh
Wow.
wow.
It was on display for the longest time until, again, the Native American Indians said, well, that's sacrilegious, which I agree to a certain extent, but it's also history.
Right.
They never removed it from the cave. They put it on a side passage because they were so worried that if they took it out of the constant humidity and temperature of the cave, that it would just deteriorate. Another location in Illinois, downstate Illinois, called Dixon. They have a place called Dixon Mound. And I was out there initially, and decades ago, actually. And you would look down, they had this kind of an enclosure that you kind of look down and you see kind of a building, I guess, and you see all these Native American Indian remains that were there for display. As people would come in, they'd pay admission or donation or something. And again, the Native American Indians got to the point where, again, that's sacrilegious. You can't do that. So what they did is they removed the bones from there, and they put plastic bones in the same exact positions as these original bones were. So, I mean, if you came in there, you would never know the difference. But I was there when there was original bones there. And, places like that where you have, you're accidentally digging up people's remains, and you're not doing it on purpose. You just happen to come across
Right.
them. And it's part of history. But even in some cases like that, that can stir a paranormal activity. And many people believe that Mammoth Cave is probably the most haunted cave in the world. I know a great story about Mammoth Cave. If you give me a second here. I was doing what they call a lantern tour. There's several different tours that you could do at Mammoth Cave. One starts off in commercial lighting, and it gets to a certain point, and then beyond here, there's no more light. So you have to go by lantern light, which is kind of cool. It's kind of creepy, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Get to this one area, the guide stops us and he points to a side passage and he flips a little switch on, and there's kind of like red lights back there, and it looks kind of really eerie. Now he told us this story, and it comes right out of the mouth of a guy, so I have no reason to doubt it. He said that decades ago, there were people, archaeologists, who were exploring the cave and trying to do little tiny excavations here and there whenever they could. And they went back in that area and they found literally thousands of artifacts, pottery shards, arrowheads, jewelry, beads, bones of Native American Indians. So much that they eventually stopped doing it. Now the guide said the reason they stopped doing it because a lot of the archaeologists, as they went back home the next day or that same day, they said that things were happening in their house, that they were experiencing paranormal phenomena. They were hearing sounds, voices,
Followed him.
things out of the corner of their eye. And now it's a closed off area that nobody goes down at all. And I've only seen that on one tour, even though I've been on that tour about 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Now, do you suppose they maybe took something home with them?
There's always a possibility. Of course, I mean, you're walking on top of something. I mean, you could inadvertently take something home in the soles of your shoes. You
True.
can
Yeah,
buy,
but if
like hiking boots or something, and if it just jams in there, you might just be taking a piece of bone away and not even realize it.
po-
Um,
but if they pocketed an arrowhead or
yeah, you
maybe
never
something
know.
with, they were famous for using turquoise a lot.
Yeah,
You know,
you would think that
that could cause a
archaeologists
little
probably
greed,
wouldn't do
maybe.
that, but I mean, who knows? I mean,
Greed's a strange thing
yeah,
in
Well,
some people.
the guy did
Because
say they were finding thousands of artifacts.
yeah.
you
Out of
know,
thousands of artifacts, who's going to miss a little arrowhead? Who's going to miss a
miss a little bit of
bracelet?
turquoise. Yeah, with turquoise. Yeah,
A
exactly.
turquoise
Yeah.
bracelet or a
Nobody
turquoise
knew what was
necklace.
exactly there. There's no catalog of it.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
That's
they,
they
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 would
I
actually
mean,
find cane reed torches and what they call cane reed sandals um, almost a mile and a half into the cave. Now, I mean, cave is spooky enough during the daytime, and even if you go there on a lantern, can you imagine going in there in pitch darkness with just one little cane reed torch illuminating your way through there?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
That enough walking a mile in a cave? I don't think so.
that
I don't
sounds
do well
almost
walking a
as
mile like that anymore.
now
that.
they would say that the reason they were brought in there, I mean, that they were drawn into the cave, I mean, could have been twofold. I mean, they could have used the gypsum for some coloration from paint and so forth. Others
Right.
probably now believe it may have been like a medicinal property, almost like a laxative. Because it's kind of chalky based, and just think of what X-Lax is made out of. Pretty much, it's just chalky
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe they were using that because they had indigestion or stomach discomfort, and they knew that this chalky white material, if you scraped it, it was white and not turning a different color. It was okay and safe to ingest. They were
Well,
they were pretty smart for being
well,
ancient Native Americans.
yeah, they had to learn to use what was around them.
Well, if you believe in if you are a religious believer and you believe in what the Bible says, there is a passage in there that says that God has placed everything on this planet that man will ever need.
That's
So,
why I always said, I ain't going to say what I always say.
but no, your description of the Mammoth Caves there, that sounds a lot like the Carlsbad Caverns up in
Yeah,
Arizona,
yeah,
because
yeah. They're the
those
deepest
are a very large
deepest
system as
deepest
well.
commercial caves, I believe, in the world that people can actually go in and visit. I believe Mammoth Cave is only about 360 feet deep to where the Echo River, and they actually do an Echo River boat tour that used to go down there, and they would show you blind crayfish and fish that had no pigmentation because
Yep,
they just
albino fish.
yeah, basically they just used their own navigation. They didn't have to have eyes or anything because it was pitch dark. The thing
Yeah,
about caves, a lot of people don't understand. If you get lost in a cave, you're never going to see anything more. You won't even see the hand in front of your face because your eyes
no,
are going to
there is no
strain.
light.
There's a complete absence of light.
Yep, I've been in some cave. I've been inside cave systems and stuff. There's one in California that's up in the Sierra Nevadas that they do tours of, and it goes pretty deep inside. It's a pretty nice cave system. It's comfortable year round in there. It's like I think it was like 58 or 60 degrees year round, so you could
Yeah,
be comfortable wearing a shirt and shorts in there.
yeah. No matter what temperature it is outside, they're considered breathing caves. So they're the air from the outside, whether it's 10 below or 110,
Hmm.
it is circulated through there and it keeps a constant temperature year round.
Yep.
That's why, unfortunately, caves are not good, air raid shelters because they breathe. So if you're down there and they drop the bomb and the radiation is going to go right into the cave, and it's
Yeah,
really,
you're screwed anyways.
Yeah,
yeah,
pretty
you're
much.
screwed anyway.
It's going to take longer.
Sure. There was another interesting cave that we investigated in Tennessee years ago, which we want to go back to. It's called Leonard's Cave. It's not a very well-known cave, but I mean, we literally found documentation of Native American Indian burials in there. We found some bones, but I think the bones probably were animal bones that were in there. There's actually a report that we found at a local library, which we actually were able to get a copy of, that shows that there was an untimely death. There was a gentleman that was killed by the county sheriff in the cave because for a while they were using that for storing their moonshine, which is perfectly preserved temperature down there.
Oh, hell yeah.
He was shot down there. So we were down there several times. We got permission because the gentleman who runs, is part of running the Thomas House. His friend owns that cave, and every time we go down there, he gives us permission to go out there and go on property. And
that's cool.
I remember there's a couple of interesting stories about that. One in particular that everybody was in front of me and over here to my left, and we were in total darkness. I was using my night shot camera. Now it wasn't total darkness to the point where you couldn't see anything because you weren't that deep into the cave, so you can still see some light coming in. But all of a sudden, I felt like literally somebody had poked me in the back. And I spun around real quick, and nobody was behind me or next to me. And to this day, I don't know if I was poked in the back or if it was a gun barrel that was poked into my back, possibly a residual haunt. Maybe the guy that was killed by the sheriff. I mean, who knows? Maybe we were trespassers and they didn't want us in there.
Maybe
I was handing my camera around, in total darkness, trying to see what it was. It was absolutely nothing there. My camera recorded some really strange individual screenshots, which I went through, and I went frame by frame of this video. And now this could be what you call pareidolia, matrixing, simulacra. But it literally, to me, looked like there was a rock figure of a person sitting, his hand on his knee, kind of doing this and looking right at me. And I actually clipped that out. It's on my website. I can't say it's paranormal, but it's sure crazy. And it's from that same direction that I was poked in the back. And earlier, we were doing an experiment, an EVP session. So we had taken a K2 meter. Now remember, we're in the middle of a cave.
So there shouldn't be any electrical in there at all.
There should be no electrical in this cave.
Now let me ask you quick before you go on.
Sure. Go ahead.
Just what consistency was the rock? Was it granite?
Limestone.
Okay, limestone. Now, if it was granite, I would tell you that it could have residual electricity in it because granite contains crystal, and crystal actually does gather and retain electricity.
But in the other thing, that limestone is also an area that a lot of people believe that so many different limestone buildings and things that are made of limestone, which is a sedimentary rock, which was basically laid upon layer upon layer upon layer.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of years ago, many with the fossilized remains of animals that were found inside there. So we were doing this K2 experiment, and we had taken this K2 meter and we had jammed it in this crevice of the cave wall, and it was very secure. And we have this on 3 separate cameras in 3 different angles. Somebody asked the question, "Are you with your family?" Nothing. "Are you alone?" Suddenly, 2 things happened. The K2 went straight to red. At that same time, there was a very strange electromagnetic burst that hit my camera. My camera at that time, an older Sony night shot using 8mm high 8 tapes, which are magnetic recording tapes. There was a burst, and you see the line go down. At the same time, that K2 meter hit, and then the K2 is literally forcibly thrown out of the wall onto the floor in front of us.
Wow.
And in darkness, I mean, all you basically see is the K2 just kind of flopping, and you hear this plastic thing hit the ground. That was still working when it got done. We propped it in there again and continued, and nothing happened after that. That was
That's
pretty
interesting.
amazing. I
Yeah.
was filming one camera. Another gentleman was a little bit closer, and then we had a camera further back in the cave uh, facing towards that area. So really, all you saw was the K2 kind of just, falling off. We had heard throughout that evening, and later when we reviewed the audio of the videotape, we actually heard chanting in the cave, chanting. We heard a chorus of voices that we could not make out. Now, in saying all that, I always like to debunk stuff as much as I possibly can before I throw things up on my website. There was running water in the cave, a little bit of running water. So I'm wondering if this is what you might call an acoustic anomaly, or even um, a water pareidolia. The
Right.
sound of the water
Right.
making it sound like something else. I mean, I guess you could say
Or
that.
what people call a babbling brook.
There you go. Exactly. But the chanting, I mean, that's
Hmm.
different than what you would hear as a babbling brook. Now, I could hear maybe the voices and so forth, and maybe that could have been some sort of acoustic anomaly.
Right.
We have never had that happen before or since, so I can't explain it. But it is another haunted cave, and like I say, we're
That one
hoping
would
to
be.
go down to
I
the
think.
Bell Witch Cave next year.
I think I'd have fun in that one
Yeah.
because we've got our night cameras and we got the extended IRs on
We
them.
don't have caves around here.
I've got
Not like
I've
that.
got we both have thermal cameras. We do have Cave in the Mountains, Joe. That's
Yeah,
out
but
by
that's a
by.
tourist
Um,
attraction.
I know it is,
I mean, you don't
but
want to take an EMF
and
meter
then
in there. That thing will go nuts with all the crystal that's in that place.
oh, I know that one. That you would probably get all kinds of false hits in there because of the
Yeah,
crystallines and the
it's just
granite,
it's hanging everywhere as you walk through. You know,
stalagmites
Yeah,
and
a lot of caves,
stalactites.
unfortunately, too. Another thing you really have to kind of watch out for when I tell people about exploring caves is that be careful of any bat population that might be in there. For
Yep.
two reasons. Number
oh
one,
well, then you can count me out.
you can get histoplasmosis, which is the disease from the bat guano. There's too much of it, and
Yeah.
you breathe the air. And also that bats, they navigate through echolocation. They actually use ultrasonic frequencies
Yep.
that you can pick up with certain devices. I actually have a bat detector that actually picks up high frequency ultrasonic waves. So if you're nowhere near a cave that's got bats and you've got that device turned on and you're doing an EVP session and you don't hear something, but suddenly the thing lights up, well, maybe you just caught an EVP because you're catching something beyond the capability of us being able to hear.
Yep. Yep. That's
Oh,
true.
that's
Now,
So
I'm
cool.
yeah,
talking about the cave and rock you guys are talking about. Does that have a lot of bats in there?
I
No,
no,
it's a
no,
tourist
it's a tourist
attraction.
Okay.
attraction. It's Cave
I
in the
know
Mounds.
I know there's one in southern Illinois
It's
called
in Mount
Cave and
Horeb.
Rock.
Cave of the Rock.
There's one in southern Illinois called Cave in Rock.
Oh, Cave in Rock. Okay.
And it's the only cave I know, I think it's in Illinois. It's all the way down past Carbondale, all the way on the very tip. And they have a lot of bats in there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know of any caves in the Illinois area, but I know down by Rockford or Roscoe area there, they've got that they call it Thunder Rock Prairie. It's like a big park area there. I'm not sure why they call it Thunder Rock, but they
Yeah.
got this huge granite boulder sitting out there.
Well, I
And
mean,
then,
Rockford is another strange area, too. I
well,
mean,
I was gonna say in Rockford they have what is it, Cut Rock Park or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they got you've heard of Tinker Swiss Cottage probably in Rockford, haven't you? I mean, that's a very famous haunted location.
No, actually, that one I haven't.
Right outside their doors, they literally got Indian mounds right on the property.
Oh wow.
So
Oh,
literally,
you know what I heard a couple of days ago, that there are Indian mounds on the campus of Madison. Um, yeah, Lisa told me that. Thank you.
On the
I
UW
couldn't remember who
Madison
told me.
campus.
Yeah,
UW
The
Madison.
UW Madison
Yeah, I
campus.
knew that.
Lisa told me that a couple of days ago.
I knew that.
there's another creepy place. If you ever guys ever go have a chance to go down to Ohio, visit what's called the Serpent Mound.
The Serpent Mound.
It's a long mound in the shape of a serpent, and the wide open mouth of the snake has got an egg in this mouth. And you can actually, there's a little observation point that you can get up maybe, I don't know,
Uh, get
25,
up high
30
and
feet
see
off
it.
the ground and kind of see the formation. It's best seen, obviously, from the air. And again,
Cool.
Native American Indians built that for some reason.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's some weird rock formations too if you take the boat tours in the Dells.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
See, me, I grew up in Madison, but I spent a lot of time up in the Dells, so I know that area well. I've seen it transform from what it used to be to what it is now.
Yeah, huge money hole.
Yeah, it's just a big giant tourist trap
Yep.
attraction. But there was a unique place up there that they called the Wonder Spot. And it was like a little tiny area. They had a little kind of cabin built on it, and it was on the side of the hill. They had um, a bowling ball on an angled ramp type thing, like you'd see in like a carnival act.
Yeah, and they put the bowling ball on the
On
lower
the
end and it'd
bottom,
roll up to the
and it
top.
roll up to the top. It
Yeah.
was like
It's
one of
it's optical illusions.
Yeah.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't an optical illusion. They say it was built on a location where gravity, something about it's there's several of these spots around the world, and they built it on one of those spots and took advantage of it.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of so-called mystery locations or mystery hills, uh, where even one in Florida when I was only like 6 or 7 years old, and things that they say water runs uphill, uh, balls roll uphill. When you stand, you have to stand at such a severe angle, otherwise you end up flying towards the end of the house, and you crack your
Right.
skull and things of that nature. A lot of them, unfortunately, are optical illusions. Maybe not all of them are, but it's the way in some cases these houses are built. When you walk into towards them and you don't see a house like this, you see a house built like this. It kind of gives you that kind of fun house effect.
Right. There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
But this one was actually built on one of those spots because if you look in one of those scientific type websites and look up the phenomenon, because they named it, they had a name for the phenomenon. And if you looked it up, they got a map, and that was actually on the Wisconsin Dells was one of those, but it was just that small area of the Wisconsin Dells.
There's a place in Illinois here called Munger Road. If you guys have ever heard about it, and it's one of these stories that initially started out here in Texas somewhere of a busload of kids on a bus that stalled on the train tracks, and they couldn't get out of the bus for some reason. And I don't know why. You open the door and you get out, but they
Yeah.
stayed in the bus, and the bus plowed into them and killed them all. Now they say as you come up to that location, you park on the train tracks. You throw baby powder all over the back of the bumper and the tail, your trunk and so forth. You put your
Uh
car
huh.
in neutral, and it looks like it's rolling uphill. Once you stop, you look at your bumper, and there's little tiny handprints all over the bumper.
I've heard that story somewheres before.
Yeah, it's called Crybaby Bridge.
Yeah.
Same situation. Only the story is different in this one because it was a school bus that went off of a bridge during the wintertime and crashed into the creek or river or whatever down below, and a bunch of the kids died.
And you
And
got to
now,
stop. if you
Right, and
stop on
now
a
when you
bridge.
start, you take your car, you park, you stop right in the center of the bridge, and you put powder on the back trunk and everything, and then put it in neutral, and it'll roll off the bridge. And then when you get out and look, there's prints all over the back of your car from the
See,
kids pushing you.
most of those have been debunked, unfortunately, because most of them, if you look at topographical maps of the area, if you really do your history, and it
Hmm.
is tilted. So it looks
Yeah,
like it's going uphill,
optical
but actually it's
illusions.
going downhill because it's an optical illusion. And
Or it's
the idea of the handprints and the fingerprints, I mean, if you don't wash your car every time you touch it, you literally impart a little oils from
Yep,
your
you
right.
got the oils
fingertips
from
down
your
there. And once
fingers in
you
there.
spray the baby powder, that
And
the baby powder or talcum powder will absorb the oil and look like little baby handprints.
the rest of it'll blow off as the movement happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a crazy story. It's a spooky
No,
story.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Unfortunately, it's one of those urban legends.
Right. There's a lot of those.
Yep, yep, yep.
I mean, I saw a place. There's a place in Madison, and I've watched movies. Grew up watching the horror type movies, and some of those are based on true stories. Others are just made up, based on urban legends like Candyman. And I did that once. But there was a place that actually looks like in Madison that looked like Cabrini Green from that movie where Candyman supposedly lived. It was just kind of spooky.
Mhm.
But and it even had the little grocery store type place right there in the parking lot too. Back when I was a kid growing up. I mean, it doesn't today, but it did back then.
Maybe that's where they filmed it.
No, because it was based. The whole thing's based somewhere in Illinois. If you watch that,
Yeah,
paid attention.
supposedly the story is that it was filmed near Cabrini Green, which was a housing project that was in a very bad neighborhood, public
Right.
housing, which was eventually torn down, and even the Robert Taylor homes that were nearby were torn down and displaced a lot of people, unfortunately. But it's sort of the same thing. I mean, the idea that you just call the Candyman 3 times and he shows up. It's like
It was 5.
is it 5 times? Okay, well
Yeah.
then you get Beetlejuice. You call
Yeah, Beetlejuice is 3
Jesus
times.
3 times. Bloody
Oh,
Marys three
I
times.
believe in Mary Worth. I believe in Mary Worth so many times with a mirror inside of a closet and something will come up out of the mirror. And that's what the whole idea from the black scrying of mirrors came from. You're looking into the
Hmm.
mirrors and you're trying to discern something coming out of the mirror. You're making a communication because mirrors tend to be, some people call them portals. They're
Right,
Yeah,
right.
mirrors that face
they're believed. They are believed to be portals, or if they're used correctly, they're believed to be able to be portals to a different dimension.
the best way to try an experiment, and we're going to do this one of these years here, is we're going to get some big mirrors, and we're literally going to sit in the middle and put mirrors on both sides of us, and be in the middle of this portal. So I mean, when you face a mirror to a mirror, you see a mirror, 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 mirror. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
looking to infinity, and that's that creepy kind of portal effect that you get from having a mirror face a mirror. Now, some people say it's more than that. That's why even during Victorian times and even before, after that, my grandparents would say if they had funerals inside homes, people in the homes would always turn the mirrors towards the walls
Or
Or
cover
cover
them
'em over.
with a
and cover
black
them with
veil.
the heat, because
Yeah.
it was said that the person's soul could see themselves and become trapped in the fabric
Mirror.
of the mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a
I've
true
heard that.
story. My grandmother
I've
said that.
No, yeah.
my
I know
grandparents
that.
used to say
I know
that too.
I know of that little legend.
They
But
used to cover the
I
mirrors in the
like I
house
like your
with
idea of facing mirrors off like that, but I like a better idea of making a hexagon out of them. Then
yeah,
that way
well,
you are completely and totally surrounded by the
Yeah,
mirrors
you know.
themselves.
I don't like that idea. I have a hard enough time walking through those mirrored fun houses, where
Yeah.
everywhere you look, you think there's a passage here, but you're running into a mirror, or something. I hated those things.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
there were so many weird little quirky things that came out of the Victorian era. I mean, this was
Oh,
the
I know.
time where, before people were embalmed. There was people thought that they would wake up in the coffin because they weren't embalmed and be clawing, trying to get out. It's just a terrifying thing. There were ways that they said that people would try to make that stop happening. And one of the ways they did that is that they would show the body for 3 days in case the body woke up. And that's where the idea for the wake comes in, because the body might wake up. Now, unfortunately, we know that today the body, somebody could be in a coma for months or even years, and that doesn't happen. So what they would do in some cases, and this is an absolutely true story, which I researched very heavily, they would have specially designed coffins that had a hole in the top of the coffin with all the way to the surface, and through that was fed a twine of a rope tied to the corpse's hand and tied
a bell.
Bell.
So in case you woke up in the middle, you thought you woke up, you could start ringing the bell, and hopefully somebody would come out and dig you up before you died. And that's where the term "dead ringer" comes from.
Is that where it comes from?
It's not that
I've heard the story,
somebody, but you're supposedly a dead person ringing a bell. Dead ringer.
Yep, dead ringer. I also heard that that's also where the term "saved by the bell" came from too.
What says what?
Saved by the bell.
Saved by the bell. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder how many times people falsely dug up because the bell rang due to wind.
Exactly, and that's why a lot of times they eventually stopped that, because people would be dug up and they would be found to be still quite dead.
Man, that
no pun intended, but I mean they were quite dead.
That's just
But you got to remember, back then, I mean, look at the medical profession. I mean,
it sucked.
It was terrible. I mean, you had your respiration, your pulse, your heartbeat could be so nearly undetectable that they would think you had died, and they would just bury you. And because they didn't embalm you, there was always that possibility that you could wake up, and a lot of people did. I mean, I remember doing an investigation in the catacombs in Baltimore, Maryland, under Westminster Church, which was not too far from the Edgar Allan Poe house, with Sarah Estep, who was a founder of the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena. She was doing an EVP sessions there, and I was doing spirit photography. And there was reports of people that were buried in those catacombs underneath the church that centuries later they moved them, they were displaced, and they would open up and they would find bloody claw marks on top of the inside of the coffins. I mean, that's got to be just terrifying.
Well, that's got to be, that's some people's worst fear, being buried alive.
Well, that's Edgar Allan Poe's worst fear. I mean, he wrote a novel about it called Premature Burial, about being buried alive. He was absolutely terrified of being buried alive. So he was a Gothic novelist that wrote, The Raven, and so many other great, was it The Pit and the Pendulum, I think he wrote too.
I believe it was.
Several others. I mean, the guy was just a master of the macabre.
Yeah.
There was another one. Was it Poe that wrote Telltale Heart?
Yep.
That was the one where it was either the heart or the person was buried under the floorboard.
Yeah, and something like that, and the heart kept beating, and they would hear the heart.
Yeah, the heart would keep beating.
Yeah.
No matter what, you'd always hear the heart.
I mean, you think of when those novels were wrote. I mean, way back in the 1800s. But I mean, they still to this day. I mean, they're spine tingling. I mean,
definitely
they adapted into a good horror show or something. I think
one of my favorites is The Raven, though.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the only books I ever read.
Quote The Raven, nevermore.
Nevermore. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually went to see Poe's grave actually in Westminster Cemetery. Now, if you've ever been, there's actually two Poe's graves. There's one in the very beginning, which is really a memorial grave for him. And then back further in the back of the cemetery behind the church, there's one that actually has a raven on it that says Edgar Allan Poe. So for years, people thought that, well, they never went further back. They thought, well, Poe was buried right here in the memorial site. A big, beautiful marble thing. And for many, many, many years, people would come out there on Poe's death date and leave a solid, a single a red rose, and in some cases a bottle of cognac on his grave. And they tried. This is a true story. They tried their darndest to figure out who this person was that kept leaving, a memento for Poe. And eventually it stopped. So I assume that whoever it was probably died themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they staked out the area. They tried to get police officers to cross the street, and somehow that person, whoever it was, got through, got past them, and were able to put that rose and that little bottle of cognac on there.
That's funny.
Crazy area, very
That's
pretty spot in Baltimore, Maryland.
pretty
Baltimore,
freaking
Maryland,
cool,
very
man.
iconic location.
I like stuff like that. I like those type of stories.
I grew up going to the freak shows when they still existed.
No, he actually grew up in a freak show.
Oh, fight me. I've seen all those documentaries on P.T. Barnum and his sideshows, but they used to come to Madison and the Dane County Coliseum, and they'd actually, when I was a kid, they were actually there, and that was some spooky shit right there too.
Oh yeah.
You
had the bearded lady. I mean, you had. There were giants that were apparently dug up out of the ground, and they eventually were thought to were hoaxes.
The Fiji mermaid.
Yeah, the Fiji mermaid, and then one that was like part monkey, part man, part this, part that.
And then they'd have tents where you'd walk in, and there was this woman. She was alive, but the lower half of her was like a snake, or something else that was really weird.
Medusa.
Well, that was all. That had to have been some clever kind of hoax. Knowing P.T. Barnum and how some of that, but some of those people, it was just pretty strange. Some of the stuff they could pull off and do.
That's how they made their money. I mean, people would pay a nickel or a dime to see something like that, and that was a lot of money back then. And they go in there and they either be mystified or they be mortified or they be
I was like creeped out. Yeah,
one of the three.
There was a few times I was like creeped out at some of that stuff because it was so real. But other times you could that can't be. It's fake. They gotta. You sit there and you think about it long enough and you figure it out how they did it.
Yeah.
Some people do. Some people just so buy into it and believe it all. But then there's still there's a lot unexplained out there, and there's stuff that you see that you just can't explain even at those freak shows. Because
even if you want to get into UFO hoaxes, I mean, look at the UFO hoaxes that we've had.
I've seen one out here where it wasn't a hoax.
Where they say they've actually have alien bodies and the alien autopsy film. You remember how that's?
I remember that one.
Yeah. And some people still not 100% sure that it's really not paranormal, that it could be something, but others are saying no, it's really just somebody's Hollywood stunt because they're into special effects.
Yeah, well, considering that it's Hollywood, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing,
They put it on as a documentary. It's like I was telling him, I saw something that fascinated both of us not too long ago, but when you get back to it, at least they didn't call it a documentary. They eventually called it a mockumentary.
Right.
Because the true mission behind this was to try to stop the Navy of conducting their sonar testing in the oceans. So they did this thing about mermaids being real or not, and being like an ancient
Discovery
ancestor of us that fled to the water and just adapted. Because they said, they made some good points. We are the only species that have that webbing that is human and bipedal.
Yeah. But the same thought. I mean, mermaids were not good things to see. I mean, they were beautiful, but they were a harbinger of death. A lot of people believe that They were
Well, they
going
didn't.
towards the rocks where your ship would
Right,
crack upon it, and in some cases, and pull you under.
like a siren.
The
Right,
sirens.
the
That's what
sirens.
they were called, sirens.
Sirens.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But see, mockumentary made him more like the dolphin's friend, and they were
made them
trying
more
to.
human like us,
Right.
but harbingers of the sea, and lived around the time of the megalodon and stuff
Yeah, I
like
wouldn't
that.
mind seeing one like Daryl Hannah.
Yeah, from
Daryl Hannah,
Splash.
she
From
played
Splash.
Splash as a mermaid.
Good Tom
Oh
Hanks
yeah,
movie.
definitely. But yeah, it was a pretty cool mockumentary, and it was Discovery Channel that put it together, or the Learning
Last night it was
Channel.
on the Animal Planet, though.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was very intriguing to watch because of the way it was set up. Well, anyway,
So
oh
when
man,
they do stuff
we've
that
actually
good,
went long with
it's
this one,
like
Joe.
hard to tell because, like I said, that was a mockumentary, but by the end they had you believing in those mermaids. You
Yeah.
know. So when it comes to Hollywood and seeing the alien autopsy, for example, it's hard to believe whether or not it's true. But then again, we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it, like those interviews with people that used to work at Area 51 or
Yeah.
are since retired or whatever, and they're coming out and
Bob Lazar.
yeah, and they actually speak about that, saying that there was a body taken in, and so on and so forth. Then it makes it a little more believable because
There
this
were
guy was a
four
credible,
bodies.
yeah, but this guy was a credible person. He was, career military. You know,
Actually, I don't know, Dale. Have you heard anything about what came out about the Roswell crash as
Uh,
of late?
I it's just something new about that. And I've been following it
Well,
for a while.
what I have heard and everything that our government was the ones that actually crashed the ship because of what they are claiming is a new radar they were testing, and what it was is a microwave beam weapon that they were actually testing,
Yeah,
and they actually were able.
Project Mogul.
Yes, thank you, and they were actually able to crash that ship. But here's the thing on that though. There was actually three ships they brought down, not one. The one ship that brought down that got all the play and everything was the one that crashed and supposedly split open all the bodies and everything. The other two made they made crash landings, so they weren't damaged that much. That's why we were able to actually take them and backwards engineer them.
Yeah. The thing that always kind of, I never quite understood, and I mean, if you listen to Jesse Marceau and General Ramey, who was his boss, and all the things that initially came out, and then some of this was actually picked up by Jesse Marceau's son, I believe, or Jesse
Yes.
Marceau himself, and he said that this material, I mean, he couldn't burn it, he couldn't bend it, he couldn't do anything with it. It had strange hieroglyphic type markings on that.
Right.
Now,
That was the
to me,
beams.
how is that Project Mogul? I mean, how is that something that the government put together? I we don't
And
have
they were
we didn't
claiming
have
this
that
is
type of
supposed to be a weather
technology
balloon.
back in 1947.
no.
Right, but they're claiming this is supposed to be a high tech weather balloon for that time of.
Oh yeah,
time frame.
oh,
But see, the thing is, the pieces that you're talking about with the hydroglyphs on it were the beam pieces. Now he also had pieces that he said looked like were layers of foil,
yeah, it looked like
tin
aluminum foil. But
aluminum
if he
foil,
crumpled
and
it
he
up,
crumble it
it,
up
You
and
could
set it
crumple it?
down, and it would actually reform itself out back into
Right.
its original form.
Yeah. And we don't have that technology in 1947.
Hell no!
and not even the balloon technology back then. That
Where do you think these
material
came
they
from?
used for the balloon would have been like that.
Yeah.
You crumple it up,
This
it would stay crumpled.
this
And that's why I believe
I
in my
believe this
honest
to
opinion.
be a product of backwards
Oh yeah,
engineering.
in my honest opinion,
And what we're doing right here,
that's why we have stuff like the B-2 bomber, the stealth fighters. Uh, I believe a lot of this is reverse alien technology
well,
that
yeah,
they may have gotten from the aliens from the crash landing. And I don't care what they say, oh, they're going to panic everybody. Well, I mean, enough people have seen this. One of my favorite shows, by the way, I don't know if you guys watch it, is that one that's called Project Blue Book. I love that show, following Dr. J. Allen
yes,
Hynek, and how he was trying to unravel all this, but he was told, well, he couldn't talk and he couldn't do that, and they were still putting a lid on him, even though he was
yeah, the
trying.
History Channel, Project Blue Book.
Yeah,
Oh
it
man,
is an amazing thing. I mean,
I was
I'm
watching
not a
that.
big UFO buff, but I got my fair share of UFO books, and I actually have one written by J. Allen Hynek in my collection.
Dr. Heineck. Yeah, he was a good scientist. He was really good at what he did.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but anyway, I had something else I was going to say too about that. Oh, and what we're doing here with the machines we're on right now, talking to each other. This is all
Well,
technology that a lot of people
computer
believe.
technology's moved way too fast, in my opinion,
But the
to
thing is,
not be reverse technology.
people are saying that computers and the technology in them are a product of reverse engineering
Well,
of
that's
the
what I'm
alien
saying.
crafts.
I mean,
Now,
it's gone by too fast because we
um,
went from these big ass computers down to being able to carry one in our phone.
oh yeah, our
I
phone
mean,
is
I can browse
basically
the internet. I can
yeah,
do
the
anything. I can
phone's
sit here on
basically a computer.
Facebook. I can do what we're doing right now with my phone.
I know
Oh, let's
this.
take it a step further. Let's take it from the Wright brothers. Okay, their first plane was what, 1903 or 1900, early 19.
19
Yeah,
something. I
And then
wasn't alive back then.
60 years later or so, we're on the moon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now
But then again,
compare that with all the millions of years of man's technology suddenly to boom from there to there. Something had to have
Exactly.
happened.
But also let's go a little further with it too. Look at the you've got the Germans and the technologies that they came up with. How'd they get them? I
same
believe that the
way.
Germans actually had ships that they had pretty much done the same thing that our government did, crashed them, and then backwards engineered them. And that's why we now have. And Tom's like, yeah, trains still drive by my house, and that's why um, we for Project Paperclip. That's why at the end of the war we brought their scientists over here because their scientists were more advanced than the scientists we had.
Yeah.
That von Braun is the one that actually designed the Saturn rockets that put us on the moon.
Or how about the satellites that are just floating around?
But was that because that Hitler actually had in his possession the spear of destiny?
No, I don't think he actually found it. I don't believe he found it because if he found it, we would be under Hitler's rule right now, buddy.
Well,
Well,
we were pretty darn close to the point where Hitler, I think, just went a little bit too far, expanded his conquest way too
He
far,
went.
and when he pissed off Russia, that's when his downfall.
That's when his downfall happened when he went into Russia. And this is what I think. This is what I think about that. The reason he went into Russia, I believe that's where the spear was located. I believe he was going. He was sending his
he
troops
found it.
in
You
to
believe he
find.
figured out where it
Yes,
was?
yes. That I have believe that is where
I
it was
just watched
located.
something here on the History Channel or the Travel Channel or Discovery Channel, one of those channels here just not too long ago that talked about that a little bit, and they even talked about that General Rommel, who was at that time pursuing Hitler in all parts of Italy, and then I think
Hmm.
northern Africa. and so forth. He wanted to get his hands on it as well, and he had instructed his, this is according to the documentary I saw. So I mean, take that for what it's worth.
Well, no, yeah, go ahead.
They were saying that they were instructing their. There was a secret. A secret bunch of people, I guess the best way to describe it, that were looking for this under the command of the United States, and they wanted to find this. And they said that they actually did find it, and then from when they found it, a couple of days later, Hitler committed suicide, and then Rommel was all over the place, and the war was pretty much over. So, I mean, that's according to one documentary. I mean, you could probably listen to several different documentaries and hear all different things. In fact, there was actually, I don't know if you guys remember, that used to be a computer game called Spear of Destiny. That it's like really kind of like it's like a 2D player. You know, it's just like a straight shooter. You see the gun in front of you and stuff like that, and you're looking for the spear of what they call Longinus, which was supposedly a Roman centurion who had used this spear to pierce the chest of Christ. And then when he did that, he was apparently had cataracts. The blood hit his eyes, and he was
miraculously saved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, everybody who had possession of that, from Charlemagne to other conquerors, William the Conqueror, and other people that had people. I know Charlemagne was one of them. I'm trying to think of the other people that were in the documentary. Everybody who had that in their possession apparently went on to become great warriors.
Great warriors, great leaders.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question, since you were on Hitler's subject earlier, and different documentaries. I saw one where they believe that he didn't actually commit suicide. That was like because of him being a dictator, they had a, what would you call that?
Doppelganger.
Thank you, Mark. Doppelganger. And that was what was killed in the bunker, and that he basically fled and probably died in his late 80s. And, even Josh Gates.
Somewhere in Argentina,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expedition Unknown, Josh Gates did something on that. I was watching that.
They actually had a documentary called Searching for Hitler.
Right, I've seen that one too.
History Channel, which I watched, and I recorded every episode. And they were Nazi hunters. They were out there looking for Mengele, and which is called the Angel of Death, and so many others. And they found a lot of them. Way up.
That would be Dr. Mengele, by the way.
But they never found Hitler. I mean,
that man was evil incarnate.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the things he did to the Jews was just unforgivable.
Which I never understood. I never understood why Hitler had such propensity.
The reason Hitler had such hatred towards the Jews, that he, in order to unite the Germans like he did, he needed someone to turn them against originally, and that was the Jewish population. So when he turned them against the Jews, and they claimed the Jews to be unfit and not be part of. I'm sorry, your monitor just popped on and it looks like it's like a computer turning on.
Yeah, we got all kind of craziness over here. I mean,
that kind of distracted me a little bit.
Yeah, this one, for some reason, I've been having issues with here. It keeps trying to reboot here, and
it sounds like you have the same problem with that one as I got with the one I'm trying to work on. That you can see in the corner of my picture here.
Well, I'm literally surrounded by computers. I mean, I have the one I'm talking about, the two behind me, the one over here, which just finally now it's going into Windows Update over here. And the one over here, plus I got a laptop over here, and so I must have
a Joe, he sounds like
person.
Me.
I feel like I'm in a cockpit of a 747 with all the stuff and monitors all around me.
Yeah. Well, Dale, you sound like me, man. I got a computer. I got a computer in front of me. I got one right here next to me. I got like three or
Wait,
four sitting over
wait,
here that
let-
I could put together.
This one
I got
here in
two
front of me
laptops.
is Windows 10 or Windows 8. This one is Windows 10 that's rebooting. The one back here you see over here is XP, and I
Oh,
keep
I love
the
XP.
programs that
Oh, I miss XP.
will not work, even though they said when Windows 7 came out that XP would work with an emulator
Well, I can't use.
with the home Windows Home, whatever it was called. This one here is Windows 8 behind me. This one over here is Windows 8.
Oh my
I have a
god.
Windows 10 laptop, which is crap. It's supposed to be a very fast AMD chip. It's like a seventh generation AMD chip, and
They're nicer because they run cooler.
Well,
I tried
yeah,
to-
I don't know. I don't know. The i5s and the i3s, i5s, and i7s actually really give the AMDs a run for their money now.
Yeah, I won't get another AMD. I got talked into this by somebody, and I won't get another one. I had an AMD before, and I could not get programs.
The laptop that I got at the beginning of the year, it's a Dell Precision or something like that, but it's running an 8-core i5 processor in it, and that thing is fast.
Oh yeah, my Chromebook's really nice too, but it runs Linux for the operating system.
I got Windows 10 on that one.
You know.
Oh, and I rebuilt a computer, an HP, and put Linux Linux Mint on it and gave it to my daughter.
See, this one right over here that you see over here, I'm pointing to.
Yeah,
This is my XP system. This is my oldest system. I got
I need that
don't know
system.
where I got it from, but I got it from Best Buy, or even maybe a computer show even before that. And it's one of the slowest computers I got, yet it has lasted the test of time. All these other computers I went through so many computers, so many hard drive crashes. I lost my publishing software, whole ton of everything. When the Windows 7 came out, they said if you got Windows Home Edition, that XP would emulate the XP programs and you'd be able to play them. Well, I have a program on this computer here that it's you probably never even heard of it, and I don't even know if I even have this. Let's see what I got.
There's a program out there that I used to love to use for designing websites, and it was made for Windows XP. I've tried to use it on every Windows operating system since, and I haven't been able to use it because I have it still. I still have that program. And they never updated the program. It was a free program that I found many years ago when there was such a thing called, what were they called? Peer-to-peer programs. They were file sharing programs. You know, I've been around since before the internet. I am what you call
P2P.
P2P. Thank you. That's it. P2P. Yeah, peer-to-peer.
Yeah, peer
Right.
to peer, P2P.
I was right still.
Yes.
Anyway, I've been around since before the internet. You know, I was like doing the bulletin boards.
Oh, me too.
And I've been playing with computers since I don't know when. And Mark and I almost had a computer repair shop opened up at one time. We just couldn't get the rest of the funding. I had a $45,000 grant from DVR, and we had a multi-million-dollar contract guaranteed.
No, it wasn't a multi-million. It
Well,
was a six-figure contract per year.
Still, it was a nice
It
contract.
was a mid-range six-figure contract per year.
It was a guaranteed
But it was
contract.
guaranteed.
It was a guaranteed contract that if we got the doors open, we would be repairing computers for one of the largest computer manufacturers in the Midwest.
Third largest.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why I said one of. Anyway, we were going to be repairing their computers under warranty, so we'd get reimbursed by them. And it was for Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa. We'd be getting the computers sent to us from all of those places.
Yeah.
Well, see, this computer as I'm pointing to back here has got a program called Paradox. You ever heard of it before?
No.
Paradox is a very ancient Windows XP program, which is basically a database. It's not a spreadsheet or anything like that. It's a database that literally you say you want to do a database, you say name, address, phone number, you assign.
I gotcha.
You each sign each one so many letters, and it automatically formats it across. Well, I have that set up for all my haunted sites that I know of,
Oh, nice.
all across the country, which is on this XP system. And every now and then I back it up onto a flash drive in case the XP goes out, because then if it does,
Oh, yeah.
Good idea.
system.
I've got an 8 terabit hard drive.
1,000 places, and that's only the tip of the iceberg, as you probably know. But it's probably the 3,000 best known locations, and I got about another 1,500. I got to load one these days if I ever find the time. So that's my baby back here, right behind me, is saving all my locations. Now, on top of that, I have a backup to my systems in front of me. I got a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte, which basically breaks everything down by Illinois and then by across the country and several foreign countries as well, which gets into more detail. That just says the location, the proprietor, the address, the state, city, state, zip, phone number, website, et cetera, et cetera. It's all it does for that. But it saves everything. So if I'm ever going to a city or a state, I pull up my database, I scroll through it, and say, oh, here's what, this is closed, this is closed, this is closed. And it's really good. Or people from the media call me and talking about media shows. I got several media shows coming out here pretty soon. Hopefully on October the 4th, my long-awaited show is going to be coming on the Travel Channel called World's Most Haunted. That's what they told me initially it's going to be October the 4th. It was supposed to be back in June, and they keep pushing it back. And they got all these reruns on the Travel Channel, which I don't understand. I'm going to be talking at least on 3 different things, maybe 3 different shows. Flight 191 in Chicago, the White House ghost, and they wanted me to talk about Elvis's ghost. So I'll be talking about that.
Elvis's ghost.
Report. The gentleman then
Wait a minute. Back up there. Did you say Elvis's ghost?
I'm sorry?
As in Elvis Presley's ghost.
Elvis Presley.
Wait a minute. How can there be a ghost if he's still alive?
He's still alive, yeah.
I'm sorry, but
I knew that
I
was
don't
going
believe
to
the
come.
man's dead. I'm a big
You're gonna
Elvis
hear all the
Presley
theories
fan.
if you tune into the show, and when I find out for sure, I'll make sure I post it on Facebook for you guys.
We've done 2 shows on Elvis Presley of whether or not he's still alive, and I've seen a lot of. There was a book written by a woman named Gail Brewer Giorgio, and it's called "Is Elvis Alive?" And she talked to a retired FBI agent, and if you look into some of this stuff and actually think about it, it's a good possibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's coming on.
I could make a lot of arguments on that, but I won't go on.
Let him continue.
The gentleman, when he got done, as soon as he got done, he came all the way from England, believe it or not. He was from Peninsula Films. I've never heard of it, but he's done some documentaries before and stuff for the Travel Channel and other, Discovery and so forth. And he was really impressed by how I handled myself, I guess. Not ringing any bells on my part or anything like that, but he immediately said, I'd like to work with you on another documentary, or another show, actually. Usually they start out with these shows. They usually do like 10 episodes, and they see how it swims in the water. If it does well, then they pick it for another season. And they wanted to do something called Celebrity Ghost Voices. And that was tentatively the name of it, which probably won't start until, because of the COVID, maybe next year sometime now.
Right.
I'm supposed to be looking into and going to investigate, actually with my team, places where celebrities perished. And on the top of the list, which I suggested, was the Buddy Holly crash site.
That's exactly where I pointed.
Right over here, over in Iowa.
Clear Lake,
Over in
Iowa. It's right in the middle of a farm field.
I literally have some, I'm not a gruesome person, but I was able to find some pretty gruesome pictures of the crash site. that actually show the three bodies ejected. The pilot was still strapped in. The three bodies were ejected from the
Ejected.
plane.
Yeah.
So you literally can say, you can stand on the spot and here's Buddy Holly, here's the Big Bocker, here's Richie Valens.
And wasn't it Waylon Jennings that lost the coin toss?
Yeah, basically they were supposed to be traveling to some venue.
Another concert. It was part of a concert tour.
Yeah, they didn't have enough people to get in there, so there was a coin toss, and Waylon Jennings lost. And Waylon Jennings said, Buddy Holly said to Waylon Jennings, "I hope you freeze in that damn bush."
Damn bus, right?
I hope your plane crashes.
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Weren't they headed? Were they headed from Moorhead, or were they headed to Moorhead?
To Moorhead. To
Okay.
Moorhead.
Yeah, that's up in North Dakota.
Yeah, it was not a good time to be flying.
That's where
No.
that's when Don McLean also wrote that song,
American Pie.
American Pie, the day the music died. And that's what it says down there in the middle of that farm field. There's a little memorial that says the day the music died.
And actually, if you Google his site, if you Google that crash site, you will actually see a big giant Buddy Holly glasses, his big black glasses that are there. And it's right on the edge of this, I forget the name of the road, but I know how to get there. And if we don't do that next year,
I want to go there so bad.
With this paranormal show, I'm going to go there with my team and do that investigation because I wanted to do that for a while, and it's not really that far. I mean,
no, it's not that far for us either.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's one of those places I wanted to go to too. I saw it. I saw a thing on YouTube by Chad Lewis. You know, who's very you probably heard of Chad Lewis.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's another one I'm trying to get on this show. I'm a big fan of his books.
And going, and we can get together on a mutual date. And, guys can come along. I have no problem with that. I'd like to have you guys come along.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, because that's. I've watched.
I don't know how much we can actually investigate there. I mean, I don't know if you can be there after dark. I don't know if you'd really want to. You'd probably want to be there about the time the plane crashed, and that's
Which was like early in the morning, wasn't it?
Right. Because flight 191 that crashed at O'Hare Airport crashed at 3:05 p.m. So every time we do an investigation there, and we can't get on the actual crash site because it's actually part of a canine training facility. And I've tried several times, and they say it's too sensitive. It's family. We don't allow family to come on there. Well, since the time I went there, they have a memorial wall. I don't know if you've ever seen it. They got bricks of every single person that died in there, including the whole flight crew. And I did a very slow pan with my cell phone, very, very slow pan, and I made that up MP4, put it up on my website under Flight 191, and made a YouTube video out of it. And I got just an incredible amount of people that said, "Thank you so much for doing that. I didn't even know it even existed. My father was on that plane. My uncle, my aunt was on that plane. My grandmother was on that plane."
I didn't know anybody on that plane.
So I have a ton of people who I know expressed great interest, and maybe that's the way to actually get on the site, to have them come along with us, because we have been there before. And I'll tell you, go to my website. We got some incredible stuff there. You're familiar with the story of Judith Wax, right? She was the wife of Sheldon Wax, the Playboy magnate. There was a bunch of Playboy people on the plane. They were supposed to be going back to LA, and she had just wrote a book called Starting in the Middle, about middle-aged life. And I got a copy of that book, and I could show it to you. Like, if you want me to send you the page, I can send you the page. Page 191. She discusses her intense fear of flying in airplanes.
Wow.
Now, if that is in prominence, if that isn't some really weird coincidence, we have gotten her name come through dose boxes, a female saying Wax. we actually have Captain Lutz come through, who was the captain of the plane. We have a gentleman talking, apparently struggling with something because you hear the intensity in his voice. And you know how ghost boxers work. You know
Yeah.
they scan very quickly. You know you might. It's difficult sometimes to get a word, let alone an entire sentence that comes through in the same voice because you're scanning very, very quickly. We got a whole sentence that comes through. It says, almost made it, need power. Came through the ghost box. And there, since the plane crash, obviously there were a lot of investigations.
Right.
And said that when that engine came off, it literally sheared every single hydraulic to the plane. How they even kept that in the air as long as they did, 4,600 feet from the runway when it crashed, is a miracle.
So they lost power.
They lost power,
Yeah, because the engine came off.
and
Right.
the thing was, it said almost made it. He was trying to land in that
Right.
which was the old Ravenswood Airport, which he actually crashed into the old airport hangar there, and actually I think killed 2 people on the ground. Just missed that trailer court. We have actually gotten even a more amazing thing. I asked what was the name of the airlines. You can check them out when you get off. Check them out when you get offline. American comes through on the ghost box.
Wow.
Coincidence is that is some radio station saying American when I'm asking the type of the aircraft.
No,
That's
odds
pretty
of that-
slim chances.
Flight number. And then it goes 19 and stops. 191 was the flight number. And it just goes on and on of stuff. And when we were doing these sessions, we were outside of the fence because it's a fenced in area. So we got as close as we could. We were probably about 150 feet, 200 feet away from where the plane actually went down. So as close as I could possibly get to be legal. I will not trespass on property. I just won't do it there.
Right.
But I was there in 1979 before they closed that place off. And I got pictures on my website of that location in 1979 that actually shows the same angle that I shot in 2012, 2015, that shows that line of telephone wires electric wires going across. That's the boundary. And it actually shows the earth being pushed up because what they were doing, they were trying to find anything. They were just turning over the earth, trying to find maybe a watch, keychain,
anything that they could
anything to
find.
give somebody some closure.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't like to, obviously sensationalize stuff like that, but I thought if I could get some definitive conversation from somebody who had passed on, who never had a chance to say goodbye to their friends and loved ones, I mean, I think I'm doing a service to those people that still survive to this day. And I even suggested that to them, that might be something they might be interested in doing, to maybe have some closure, because there were
You need it.
many reports of ghosts that happened after that, including a very unusual sighting reported to me by a woman who was jogging around the fenced-in area around 10:30 in the evening or so. Another gentleman was running towards him or her, and they both kind of stopped, and she looked at him and she noticed that he was kind of like smoldering, but it was a cool evening, so she thought maybe it was just the body heat coming off of you, which
Right.
you can see. And he was very frantic. He said, I need to know where I can find a phone booth. I need to make a phone call. It's very important.
They don't exist anymore.
Right. Back then they did. So
Yeah,
she
right.
pointed in the direction where the phone booth was, turned around, and this guy was gone. And in his wake, she said there was a very heavy stench of jet fuel.
Ooh.
So
Wow.
the way I look at this is that, 4,600 feet off the end of the runway. I mean, the plane literally went like this. It flipped over on its side before it plunged into the ground. And on top of that, a lot of people don't know this. There was a documentary made about this. There was a brand new service that American Airlines passengers had at the time. There was a camera mounted in the cockpit. I never say that. Showed you taking off and landing. Well, unfortunately, it also showed everybody in the screens the plane plummeting right into the ground. They were seeing that in the cabin. Can you imagine the panic, knowing that you're about to die?
Wow.
Trying to reach out to friends and loved ones, either through a phone, a text, whatever you might have had back at that time, or even trying to get a message across. So I'm
That was
thinking
back in the 70s?
well, yeah, this was in the 70s, so I don't know.
They didn't have cell phones then.
They didn't have cell phones then. Okay, whatever. Maybe it was just their way of reaching out to people, and then maybe that's what this gentleman was trying to do. He was trying to reach out to family and friends to try to say, "Hey, I love you, goodbye," or something like that. And there are so many stories like that.
Well, just think of the terror of all those people, knowing that they were going to go down.
Well, you know the story of Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman, right? Have you heard that story?
No. You've been doing this a lot longer than we have, as far as researching.
Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman.
Oh, I know her, yeah.
Okay. Her and her mother were supposed to be on that plane.
Really?
True story. Absolutely true. It's in my book. I did research on it. I've actually go to her. You can find bits and pieces about it on the internet. She don't like to talk about it. She suddenly got a very intense feeling that she was a sickening feeling that, no, I don't want to be on that plane. It was, you call it a premonition, call it whatever. They canceled. They did not get on. And apparently before they got out of the terminal, that plane went down.
I think I remember hearing something about that in one of her interviews.
Can you imagine what you must have felt about that time, knowing you had just cheated death?
Oh, yeah.
There was a guy in Cincinnati, Ohio, named David Booth. David Booth, for about 2.5 weeks prior to the crash, he began having dreams about a large body aircraft crashing somewhere in the Midwest. He called the Federal Aviation Administration's regional director, Paul Williams, and he thought this guy was going to think he's a kook. So he starts telling him what he's dreaming every day. And the guy's listening. The guy's paying attention. He's saying, can you tell me what's the plane look like? How many engines does it have? What's the coloring? Can you see any markings on the plane? Can you see any numbers? He wanted to see if he could maybe prevent this. True story. Absolutely true. And it went on, it went on, it went on until one day he's coming home from work on his car, hears on the radio, the Flight 191 lost an engine short just on the runway, crashed just short of a trailer court, killing all 286 passengers on board. Mm-hmm. And the dream stopped. And then he knew what he had seen. There was another woman in, I believe it was Rhode Island. Her name was Robin something. I can't remember it right offhand. That was having a similar dream that was taking place about that same time. So there was a whole paranormal connection to this event, and I think to this day still is. I mean, there were dogs that would bark constantly for weeks after this crash, pointing towards that open field.
Well,
barking.
I think animals are more sensitive to that kind of stuff, though, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's pretty amazing what they can sense and probably see that we can't see.
They have their own night vision. Basically,
right.
They see in almost total darkness. We know that they can hear a dog whistle, which is ultrasonic sound. I mean, when we blow a dog whistle, we hear that air coming through, but they pitch.
They hear a pitch.
they can track a person or animal by scent alone, and we can't even smell that. And they may even have their own innate sixth sense that they can
Well,
pick up something.
some of them are even more unique than that. There's a breed of dog like mine, the Siberian Husky. It's the only breed of dog that can regulate its own metabolism system.
Yeah.
And scientists are baffled of why that is. But it allows them to run forever.
Yeah,
They don't have to stop or slow down.
When I watch these Iditarods, and I see these Huskies and these Malamutes, and they're just running. I said, don't they ever get tired?
No,
They don't. They love it.
they love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you hook them up to a sled and pulling. I don't take my dog for a walk. She takes me for a walk. I could probably put on a pair of roller skates or be sitting in a wheelchair or something, just hold on to her leash, and she'd be taking me for a ride.
Yeah.
And she'd love it because she loves to run. They all love to run, and if they get out, that's what they do. They won't stay in the yard.
Yeah. Yeah. So needless to say, I've been trying for years to get onto the actual property, the actual site where that crash went down, because it has changed a little bit. There is a kind of a storage trucking terminal / storage area that kind of takes up part of that land. But if you look at aerial photography maps, you can pretty much look at where everything is today and where it was back then, and figure out exactly where the crash took place. And there are ways to get on the property through holes in the fences illegally. I just won't do that.
Yeah. That's.
I want
I'm going to do that.
I won't do
I'm
that
going to
stuff
do that
either.
at Asylum State Park, though, next time we go there, because it's wide open on the one side to the street. And I'm going to walk up there on the Princess Burial Mound just to check it out, because that's what I wanted to do. And now that we know exactly where it is, it's got to be done. But I don't think they're going to really do nothing about that. I mean, we're not
No,
hurting
they
any nothing.
probably
We're not
won't.
doing any
We're not-
property damage.
Yeah.
We're not there to tear anything up. or
I mean, worst
destroy
thing they can
anything.
say is, you got to leave. Okay, I'm done here. Anyhow.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I mean, we were doing an investigation.
But I'm not going to climb the fence because, but it's not all the way around it either.
Sure. We were doing an investigation in a small cemetery with another team last year. And he said, well, I mean, we don't have permission to go in the cemetery. However, the cemetery is bound, the two boundaries of the cemeteries, and it has no fence there. The two boundaries are public sidewalks.
Right.
So he says, you can sit right on the sidewalk and you can do your EVP sessions, you can do your experiments, and the cops will go right past you and they can't do anything because you're on public property. And sure enough, we had 6 cops go right past us, and they didn't even slow down. They knew we were fine. And if we would have went into the cemetery, I mean, they might have had a problem or an issue with that.
Didn't we go
They
near
may
one?
have said something to you.
Hey, wasn't there one like in Whitewater that when we were doing the Witches of Whitewater thing, wasn't one of those 3 cemeteries there?
Yeah, the one that's all fenced
It was
off, I
like
think, is
permanently
it has
closed
a.
off, and it was all fenced
I
off, so
think,
we had to
yeah,
walk.
they have that parking
around
lot.
it.
They have a parking lot next to it, and I think they have a sidewalk in front of it, so we could actually sit there on the sidewalk, and they wouldn't be able.
Well,
to
that's
do
what we
anything.
did. We walked around from the parking lot onto the sidewalk that day because we couldn't go into that particular cemetery because it was permanently closed.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah,
one of the
it's
3 that were
completely-
part of the Witches of Whitewater thing.
Yeah, that cemetery is completely fenced off and locked down, so nobody can actually go up in there. Not even family members of the people that are buried there.
Yeah, normally I don't do that many cemetery investigations per se, because it's always been my theory that what's to draw somebody back to that site where their body is now. There's really nothing to draw it back unless there's some sort of grave desecration, some sort of strange satanic rituals, or maybe the bodies were washed away because of a natural disaster,
Right.
of that nature. But in some cases, there are some cemeteries that I've investigated that fit those criteria, and that's why they are considered to be very haunted.
Right.
I don't do it to be disrespectful. I do it to see if there's somebody there that wishes to talk and to
Right.
get the message
Yep.
across. And I've always been respectful of anything I've done in the paranormal, and always tell people that you shouldn't go out there and provoke.
No.
You should go out there and talk just like we're talking today. That's how they want to talk. They want to just get a message across or talk. You start provoking and calling them names. I mean, they're going to clam up, or they might, they might maybe lash out. I mean, not maybe in a negative way, but maybe they
Do
could.
you want to take that chance?
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
I just don't think that people have to provoke. I mean, I've gotten enough evidence. 40 some years I've been doing this, and I've only provoked one time in 45 years, and that was an experiment. It was an experiment that we did to see if that would create,
Any kind of response?
a response, and I got no response. I got no
Yeah.
response, and I got nothing negative happen to me. And I will say it was a location where one of these infamous TV ghost hunting teams had been to, and they had provoked the hell out of it. And I said, well, I'm going to go and we tried doing some experiments before we provoked, and nothing. We got a few things here and there, not very much. And I said, okay, I'll go up there by myself. But I wasn't really by myself. I had cameras up there, and I was being monitored from downstairs. People were no further than 15 feet away in case something happened. I didn't expect anything to happen anyway. And nothing did happen. And
Right.
so I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes if you treat spirits with respect, just like me and you, we're treating each other with respect, I think that's the best way you can get some sort of
Well,
communication going.
yeah, I think that's, you got to consider that if you look at it with a little common sense, that if you're trying to contact a spirit, those spirits were once human beings like you and me.
Absolutely.
All right. So you always want to treat them person. It's like that old saying, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, you know. So you want to treat them with respect. You're probably more than likely to get better responses.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to talk with an angry voice or do anything that could, enrage them or provoke them. That might not always turn out too good.
I mean, if I was a spirit and I had a ghost hunting team come in there and start shenanigans like that, I probably wouldn't say a darn word.
Yeah, I'd stay quiet.
Ignore.
I wouldn't even lash out because
Leave
that's
the
just
area.
giving them,
Yeah, leave the area.
it's working.
That's what I'd do if I
I
could.
was there, I'd say, hey, nobody home.
Exactly. You get that rude salesman at the door. What do? Slam the door in their face.
And
Yeah.
you got to remember too, a lot of these TV shows, and we talked about this before in past.
Yeah, we have.
A lot of these TV shows, they're doing it because the sponsors want them to do it.
And the money.
Yeah.
Money.
It's all about money.
And if the team was going out week after week, month after month, and getting zilch, how
That'd be
long
more realistic.
would it last?
That'd be more realistic, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I was doing it with TV shows like Sightings and Unsolved Mysteries and so forth, and The Other Side and others that I had been on, Mysteries, Magic, and Miracles, and others, when they contacted me, they would say, "Well, we really want to see what you do, how you set up, what you do, how you work your equipment, how you do your investigation, and if you get something, hey, that's a bonus.
You're lucky.
You're lucky. That's a bonus."
Right.
And that's the way it should be. You shouldn't expect to go out and get something or be scratched or pushed down stairs or something.
Now, I'm sure the best part of this, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, just going out to some of these locations, the historical value alone and what you learn from the history of the place is worth it.
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
Definitely.
And like you said, if you get something on camera or on audio or something like that, that's a bonus.
Well, I've always said from day one that history and hauntings go hand in hand. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, of course.
you have to know the history of a location to see what may have precipitated the ghost story.
Right.
And even if you don't get anything, look at the history of some of these locations that I've been to and other people have been to and places that you guys have been to.
Yeah, some of them may be a little morbid, but
Yeah,
that's the reason. And some of these are pretty famous. Some of these locations, like when we were talking to the Christy Sumner, we were talking about the Borden House,
yeah, never been there.
or the Ma Barker House
Okay,
in Florida. You know, and they were shot up in there.
yeah.
You know, now the
Yeah.
place has been moved, but that was for preservation. They
Yeah, like I
moved.
said,
They moved the house.
even if you were to go to a location and not get anything at all, I mean,
Just the historical value
the
alone.
significance of that place, what has happened there, to me, is worth the trip.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's part of why when I was going through high school, and this is going way back quite a while here because I'm going to be 68 this year, so I'm not a youngster anymore. But when I was going through high school, the two courses that interest me the most was science and history.
Yeah. Me too.
Straight A's in science, straight A's in
It is in history. Yeah.
how it fits into what I do now.
It
Science
does.
and history.
But then when you were back in high school, though, weren't you kind of thinking, what the hell is, this stuff? I understood what science had to do with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay. But sometimes you'd wonder, what the hell has history got to do with anything? Why do I got to learn history?
Yeah.
I mean, I got so bored with it but then I ended up with a teacher at some point.
History's fascinating.
Yeah, well, I had a pretty boring teacher my freshman year, but after that, I was getting straight A's because I had a teacher that made it more interesting,
Yeah.
and then I got into it, and I'm going, it's just the coolest aspect because if you ever get to these places, you can go, oh yeah, that's where this happened, oh yeah, that's where this happened, or this is why this is this way.
Well, it's always been my idea why we learn history so that we don't repeat bad
Right. Well, that's what the history teacher used to always say.
past. Like
So you
the
don't repeat this.
war, like the Revolutionary War. I can see you were trying to fight for independence, but like the other bad things that have happened in history, you learn from that stuff. And
You would hope so.
that's why I don't know if I totally agree, and I don't like to get any political, but I don't know if I totally agree with removing all these statues of Civil War people. I mean, I can understand why people think that they're doing it for the right reason because they're traitors, but it's still, you're destroying history. And if you destroy history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right. Exactly.
That's just my thing with that.
Well, it's like if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're going to keep making that same mistake.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with that. They don't need to remove all of this stuff and take away all this stuff and ban all this stuff because it's part of our history here.
Yeah.
It's all part of history.
I mean, I got upset, and just because I was a kid, I was the oldest and kind of considered the black sheep, so I was also a rebel. I did things against my parents' wishes quite often, but for me, that that Confederate flag stands for being a rebel. Because I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard.
Dukes of Hazzard.
The two guys that fought the system, and happened to be moonshiners.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
But,
I think people basically, sometimes take the wrong road on some of the stuff because whether it's fed by one political side or the other political side or something in between. I mean, my whole thing is okay, and you may disagree with me, and I that's fine, but I always said that why all of a sudden? I mean, why hasn't this been a big some of these statues went up during Reconstruction in the 1880s.
Well, yeah.
And why all of a sudden, some 120 years later, now they all have to come down?
Yeah, because people
our
find them
country has turned
offensive.
because our country's turned into a bunch of damn snowflakes.
Yeah, I understand that to some people it's offensive, and I can totally understand it, especially if you're a black person. I can totally understand it, but it's not like you're, in my opinion, and other people might disagree. I don't believe that you're glorifying the South, or you're glorifying slavery, or
No.
you're glorifying.
No,
No, you're displaying what history is there.
or was there.
Or was there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, it's
some
a
of these
statue of
statues
Robert
and
E.
stuff. Yeah, but they were put there in place of significant battles that happened, or something that happened on those
Yeah.
spots, or in that town, or in that state.
So what gets me is where does it stop? Okay, I mean,
Yeah,
you
what's
have
next?
people here in Chicago take down 2 statues of Christopher Columbus. Okay, because he was bad to the indigenous people here. Okay, which
Oh,
he may have been. Okay, but then if you go even further, well, Thomas Jefferson, uh, George Washington,
Andrew
John Adams,
Jackson.
they were all slave owners.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are we going to take them off the dollar bills? Are we going to
Or,
take?
or we gotta take down Mount Rushmore?
Are we gonna remove Monticello and Mount Auburn, Mount Vernon? Are we going to take those
It's
places
just
down?
it's ridiculous. It's,
It is.
it's the whole thing. It's like, okay, people, you gotta get over your vices because of the fact that you can't erase history. History is history. It's already been done. It's over with. It's water under the bridge. Let it go.
Yeah.
Move on in your life and continue with what you have now.
And you can't rewrite it.
No, you can't
Right.
rewrite it like some people are trying to do.
I mean, you wouldn't believe how many friends that have unfriended me on Facebook
Yeah, I would.
because of all this crap,
Oh, I believe it.
and that's why I just usually refuse to get into political arguments anymore.
That's
because-
why we stopped and went to the
Yeah.
paranormal.
So yeah,
Because when we first started, we were pissing a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
Yeah, it's
I'm glad
past
that
2 hour
we've
mark.
done this.
was
We
fun.
did this for a long time. It's been really
Time
fun.
just flew
and
by.
I would love to continue talking with you, Dale, because this
Yeah.
is awesome.
He's got to get up at
But-
3, 4 a.m.
I got to be
All right.
up at 3:30 in the morning.
yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I always have a good time, and like I say, as of right now, I'm still on for Bray Road.
Oh, yeah, so are we.
Oh, so are we. As long as it stays,
As
as
long
long
as
as the
like
weather
this
stays
and
good
nothing-
and it doesn't flood down there,
yeah, as long as
Leah will be good with letting us in. So
yeah, as long as they don't add you guys to your state to the quarantine.
We're
list.
I'll get
I
to
didn't
that.
even hear about that, man.
All right, let me get to these announcements then before we log off. This Friday the 18th, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because today's my brother's
Today's
birthday.
the 16th. Today is
Yes.
your brother's birthday, and my dad would have been 91 today.
Well, happy birthday to your dad in heaven. On Friday the 18th, we're going to have Allison Jorlin
Very
on.
good person.
She does the American Ghost Walk tours, and she's got a very special video series coming out all about the women who work or are part of the paranormal world. We're going to find out more about that when we talk to her on Friday. And then Wednesday the 23rd, we have William Harder, and we're going to be talking about Charles Manson. This guy has interviewed Charles Manson, and we're going to talk to him
Several times.
30 plus times.
Wow.
And he also has a serial killer memorabilia
Collection.
auction house and collection. Yes. He's got a spider, a pretty big spider that was made by Manson himself. So those are our upcomings.
Nice.
So, And then check us out on utterlyinsaneproductions.com. And until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you Friday.
And ghostresearch.org,
Oh, yeah.
that's
And if you want
Dale's
to,
site. We
all
got it
those stories he
scrolling
was
here.
talking about, they're all up there on his site. He's got links.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dale.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
As always.
Have a good